Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. This is Darnell Hines. I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Engagement and Donor Relations here at the Law School. I want to start by having a quick housekeeping note. I've muted all of the phones on the line during the presentation such that we won't get a lot of background noise. When it comes time to questions and answers, I will unmute everyone's lines so that you will have an opportunity to ask questions of Don. I want to thank you all for joining us for our annual Wigmore Club call. We hope you enjoy this opportunity to hear from Don Rebstock, our Associate Dean of Admissions and Career Services about our incoming class of 1Ls. He will also deliver an employment update and the latest in our Law School for Life initiative for alumni. As Wigmore Club donors, you help to propel the priorities of the Dean on behalf of our students, faculty, and programs. Whether you give the students scholarships, the good work of our Bloom Legal Clinic, or offer your unrestricted support where it is needed most, your annual support helps form the backbone of this law school. You have each contributed to the progress of our ongoing Motion to Lead campaign, which has raised over $245 million for the law school. Thank you very much. As we approach the end of our fiscal year on August 31st, we are incredibly grateful that you have counted Northwestern in your philanthropy, and we truly value your commitment and generosity. Now I'd like to introduce Don Rebstock. Don Rebstock is the Associate Dean of Admissions and Career Services at Northwestern Pritzker School of Law. Since joining the law school in 1996, he has led the law school's admissions, career services, marketing and communications, and strategic initiatives operations at various times, including being the interim associate dean for development and alumni relations in 2015. Since the late 1990s, the academic credentials of Northwestern law students have risen substantially, and the student body has shifted from a predominantly regional one to now among the most geographically blended in the nation. Northwestern also became the first law school that attempts to interview everyone who applies at the law school and established a strong emphasis on enrolling students with post-undergraduate full-time work experience. Approximately 90% now enter with at least 1 year of experience prior to matriculation, the highest percentage of any top law school. Since 2000, Northwestern Law has received national attention for its career services function. Since the Princeton Review began publishing annual rankings in 2005, it has recognized Northwestern Law as the best law school for career prospects on 6 occasions. Also, in February of 2010, Northwestern Law achieved the top ranking by the National Law Journal for placing the highest percentage of graduates in the nation's top 250 law firms. The law school frequently places within the top 5 in this ranking. Don helped lead the establishment of Northwestern's 3-year JD MBA program in 2001, the first of its kind and largely regarded as the best. More recently, Don spearheaded the creation of the law school's San Francisco Immersion Program and facilitated the creation of a technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship concentration, the Innovation Lab, a public interest center, and 2 programs that provide financial assistance for alumni, the Interest Freedom Program and the Emergency Alumni Relief Program. Previously, Don worked at the Kellogg School of Management's Office of Admissions and Financial Aid, ultimately as Associate Director of Admissions and Financial Aid. He earned his Bachelor of Music from Northwestern University and his MBA from the Kellogg School of Management. As you can see, Don has done a lot in his career. Certainly, he's held every job but the dean's job here at the law school. I'm pleased to introduce Don Rebstock.
Thank you so much, Darnell. And let me just echo Darnell's thanks to each of you for all that I know you do for this law school, both in terms of your philanthropy, but also in terms of your time. I know that many of you sacrifice your time on behalf of the law school, and we're really grateful. And everything we do here really deserves recognition of your help. So I'm really happy to be able to have this chance to speak with you about admissions, career services, and our Law School for Life initiative. And I thought I would start off first with admissions and provide you with a little bit of a backdrop on the admissions industry in the law school world before I get into our own specific results. So, as many of you may have heard, applications nationally to law schools since the 2007 financial crisis really plummeted. And in fact, in 2016, nationally, there were the fewest applications to law school that there have ever been, at least since the Law School Admission Council began tracking the volumes back in the late 1960s. Since then, there has been a slight rebound nationally. Last year, applications were up about 2%. That was actually 2 years ago, and then this past year, applications were up about 3%. In our case, let me go back. So nationally, applications actually went down about 38% during that period. Our applications only actually went down about 13% during that period, and I attribute that largely due to our emphasis on work experience, and I think the fact that we tend to attract applicants that are a little bit more focused on their commitment and reasons for going to law school. So in the last 2 years, 2 years ago, we actually had a 19% increase in applications. The year before, we had an 8% increase in applications. This year, we had a 2% increase in applications. So it basically mirrored a very small increase with what we were seeing nationally. Our peers actually had a 2% decline in applications. How that is translated, again, I think the news is very positive with our entering class, which just checked in yesterday. We have, as of right now, we have 243 students in the door, which is right at what our target has been. That includes JD students, JD MBA students, and JD PhD students. Their credentials are very strong. Their median LSAT is a 169, which is the same as what it was last year. We don't have the results for our peers yet, but that 169 for last year's results ranked us as having the 8th highest median LSAT. The median undergraduate GPA went up slightly to 3.85. That's the highest it's ever been here. Last year it was 3.84, and that was the 7th highest in the country at that time. Beyond the academic indicators, the class is very strong in terms of diversity on a number of fronts. 31% of the students are minority students. We have 20 African American students in the class, which is up from last year. We have 21 Hispanic and Latino students in the class. So they make up 17% of the class. In total, as I think I mentioned, 31% of our students are minority students. 49% of the students are women. 91% of the students have full-time work experience. That's up a bit. Last year we were at 88%, and we had actually gone down to, I think, 86% the year before that. So we're back up over 90% with work experience. And geographically, again, very strong in terms of the diversity. We have only 35% arriving from the Midwest, so the remaining 65% coming from other regions of the country and other parts of the world. So very happy with those results. I thought I would also share with you just some of the interesting tidbits about some of the entering students. For example, we have a student here who was a former assistant coordinator for Iran nuclear implementation for the U.S. Department of State. We have someone who was a Fulbright recipient. We have someone who was a paralegal for the Office of the General Counsel for the Mueller investigation. Former ordained rabbi, a professional dancer who performed with the Ballet of Phoenix. We have a graduate of Juilliard who was a professional actor on HBO, ABC, and CBS television series. There is a former member of the 2014 NCAA National Champion Duke lacrosse team. We have another person who was a professional golfer who played on several events on the Canadian PGA Tour. We have a nightly producer for NBC News, a U.S. Army Ranger, former professional bridge player, and a former professional poker player who actually appeared on the World Series of Poker. Really impressive group coming in, and very happy about them, and I'm happy to talk more about that later if you like and if you have questions. So with that, I'd like to turn to employment. Again, the news is very positive for Northwestern Law, but I'll start again with what's going on nationally. So again, as I'm sure you've heard, employment for law school graduates suffered pretty significantly after the financial crisis in 2007, and since then, it's been a case of trying to claw back gradually. We're certainly not back to where we were then, particularly in terms of law firm hiring, but it's actually coming back pretty strongly, as you'll see here. So the class of 2018, which is the most recent class that the National Association of Law Placement has results for, had an employment rate of 89.4%, and that was actually the highest employment rate, I think, going back to about 2010. And that's up slightly from last year, which last year we could have said the same thing as well in terms of it being the highest overall employment rate since 2010. However, it's a matter of perspective, because the reason for the increase in employment is almost entirely due to a lesser number of law school graduates. The number of law school graduates has actually declined by about 25 to 30% since the financial crisis, and actually the number of jobs secured by law school graduates nationwide is actually the fewest since 1996. And that can be said for overall jobs as well as the number of jobs secured in private practice. So it's a matter of perspective, but thankfully schools seem to have made proper adjustments in terms of size to match what's going on in the marketplace. The one exception is that there has been some rebound with the very largest law firms. So law firms of 500 or more attorneys, there was actually a decent increase in the number of people taking jobs with them. In fact, we're now at the point where there are, I think we're at 600 fewer jobs accepted than was the case back in 2008. So there's been, a fairly significant rebound in the number of jobs that students are getting in the very largest firms. So about 4,600 that students got jobs in firms of 500 or more, compared with about 5,000 back in 2008. So that's what's been going on nationally. If you look at law firm revenues, it basically is consistent with that story. Again, the 2018 results, which were the most recent, the revenues among AmLaw 1 to 50, the AmLaw 1 to 50, those revenues were up 8%. If you go to the AmLaw 51 to 100, revenues were up 5%. Then to AmLaw 101 to 200, revenues were up 2%. So it's definitely right now the largest firms which seem to be, I guess, benefiting the most in terms of revenue and doing more of the hiring. In terms of our own internal results, the class of 2018 again is the most recent class for which there are comparable employment results for us and other schools. And that is because schools are required to report based on 10 months after graduation, which would have been March 15, 2019. For our class of 2018, our overall employment rate was 94.8% employed. That was the second highest employment rate of all law schools in the country. Only Columbia had a higher rate at 95.3%. Just looking at that in terms of what had happened before in 2017, We had the 9th highest employment rate at 91.9%. At graduation that year, we were at 86.3%. Again, for the class of 2018, at graduation, we were at 90%. And the good news is that the class of 2019 is well on its way to doing actually just as well, if not better, than the class of 2018. So the at-grad employment rate for the class of 2019 was up another percentage point at 91%. And currently, we're already up to 93%. So things are looking really, really good for our graduates on the employment front. And interestingly enough, the main increase that we're seeing again is in the percentage of students who are getting jobs in the very biggest law firms. So that percentage has gone up from about 2/3 to 3/4 of the class in just the last 2-3 years. Clerkships are continuing to be about 10% of the class. One thing that's interesting is that if you look again at that class of 2018, we actually had 6% of our graduates get positions internationally. So we actually had two students who secured jobs at Latham in London. We had a student who secured a job on as a clerk on the Israel Supreme Court in Jerusalem. We had a student receive a job at DLA Piper in Beijing, at Baker and McKenzie in Hong Kong, and also Morgan Stanley in Shanghai, China, just to name some of them. That was actually significantly more than what is typical. For the class of 2019, we're again at about 1 to 2% of the class having jobs overseas, which is more common. The other thing I just want to mention as it relates to employment is the fact that less than 50% of our students typically end up in Chicago and actually in the Midwest as a whole. And I think that there's perhaps a perception out there that if you go to Northwestern, that chances are you're going to end up in Chicago, or that your prospects are going to suffer if you want to go outside of Chicago. And that's just not the case. More than half of our students each year go to regions outside of the Midwest. About 1/4 of our students go to the New York market. And in fact, we are only one of 3 law schools in the country that sends at least approximately 15% of our graduates to both coasts as well as the Midwest. So we're truly national in terms of our placement, and this is something that certainly comes up as we speak with prospective students, and something that we want to make sure that we're communicating to them very clearly as well for their employment prospects. Lastly, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about an initiative here that we're calling Law School for Life. And some of you may recall that in our most recent strategic plan under Dean Rodriguez, one of the 5 major pillars had to do with kind of lifelong support for our alumni. And Kim Urocco has really embraced this particular idea and also is incorporating it as one of her key priorities. And so I guess to start off, I should just provide you with a little bit of context. So as a law school, we tend to view the lifetime of a legal professional as having 3 different stages. So there's the first stage where you're a prospective student, the second stage where you're a current student, and then the third stage where you're an alum. So we have tended, I would say, to focus very heavily on the first 2 stages in distinguishing ourselves and being very innovative. And I think that we've garnered that kind of a reputation in both the way that we attract our students with the interview program and work experience, and then in terms of the educational program that we deliver, in terms of the different competencies that we emphasize beyond just the core legal skills. So our cooperation with Kellogg in providing some business understanding, our JD MBA program, our heavy emphasis more recently on law and technology. And I'd say that we do a strong job on the alumni front, but I don't know that we necessarily have distinguished ourselves in terms of being necessarily an innovator over time. And so that's really what this is about. This is about really trying to devote attention to the third stage of the cycle, and in particular, in terms of providing lifelong career support for our alumni, as well as lifelong continuing educational opportunities for our alumni. And so our goal is to provide best-in-class career services support for our alumni, and really to develop a robust menu of educational offerings for our alumni that are career relevant and will enhance their abilities to continue to grow in their careers. So on the career services front, just over a year ago, we hired our first ever full-time alumni career services advisor, Michelle Jackson. And she is not only providing individual counseling, but she is now at the point where she is providing some fairly regular career-related programs for alumni. Some of those have been advertised in e-briefs and on our website and in the alumni magazine. But in terms of the individual counseling, up to this point, she's met with 142 different alumni, over 184 individual counseling sessions, and those alumni have spanned the classes of 1981 to 2018, and it's on a whole range of issues. Some of them very directly career related, and people looking for job changes or people who are out of work that she's assisting. Some of them going into more personal crises and some well-being, and she's had to refer people to different resources in that regard as well. She presented a session at Reunion Weekend last year, which she's going to be doing again this year. She's done sessions on building your personal brand, networking strategies, professionalism on your early career experiences. And she is launching now a series of webinars on a number of topics, one per month over the next year. So she just recently did an introduction to the alumni services that she's providing, and had close to 50 people that attended that. And almost immediately after, I think within the first hour, she already had about 10 people who had signed up to have career counseling sessions with her. So really excited about what's happening there. She also just recently launched 2 peer forums, and that's something that we hope to continue to do. So these peer forums are for people who are at similar, what we call pivot points of their careers. The 2 that we did just this summer, one was for people who were approaching retirement, and another was for just for people that were generally planning some sort of a career transition. Many of those people were in the career transitions group were people who were just at the point where they would be transitioning from associate to partnership, whether it was equity or non-equity partnership. And so we get together these individuals who are at those common stages, and they provide support to one another, and we also then have some guests that come in that can provide some expertise as well. And so we're really happy about those. They just concluded last week. They went on throughout the summer months. I think they had 4 sessions apiece. And I know one that we're planning to do this fall, I believe, is going to be related to people who are making the jump from associate to partner, who are at that stage in their career. On the professional education side, this is an area that we're now, I guess we're not as far developed in terms of the specific Law School for Life initiative. We certainly have done a lot under Julianne Checky's leadership with our professional education and our Corporate Counsel Institute, our Securities Regulation Institute, and our Garrett Institute. But we're hoping to expand and do much more in the coming months and years. And this could range from, again, individual lunchtime talks or programs, whether it be by a Northwestern Law faculty member, an industry expert on a particular topic, or an alum who's a particular expert on a topic to share their expertise with other alumni. It could be perhaps providing a short course where you could enroll in probably an online platform for maybe 6 weeks with sessions once a week and get a certificate at the end of it or a badge. It could be videos or web podcasts that we create on particular topics. Could be conferences. So there's a whole range of things that we see that we could do, and we want to think broadly on this. And I guess all of this to say, we have certainly done some surveying on the career services front. It's something that we're going to definitely want to do on the professional education side, but we'd love to hear from our alumni in terms of what you all think would be relevant and helpful in your careers and advancing careers for you and other alumni. So this is something we're really excited about. I think it's a place where we can really distinguish ourselves. Going back to what I was saying at the beginning, law schools really haven't delved into these areas to a large extent. And we look at, across campus to Kellogg at the business school, and they have been very active. And so I think they provide a really good kind of model for us, at least to initially observe and in some cases emulate. So that's our goal, is to really kind of become best in class in both of these areas. So I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up my comments and happy to take any questions that people have or suggestions or comments.
All guests have been unmuted.
So this is Darnell Hines again. As Don said, we are available for questions. I've unmuted all of the lines, and just as a reminder, if you haven't muted your line, please do so now so that we can hear those who might have a question. Is there anyone who has a question?
Darnell, this is Steve Matucci out in Arizona. Want to congratulate you, Don, on just how are you?
Good. How are you?
Just fantastic. Looking forward to being there in October. Congratulations, first of all, Don, to you and your team for the accomplishments. I mean, it really is outstanding. Do you have I've always thought that our selectivity in terms of admissions is higher than even the rankings in USUs, et cetera. But in terms of our acceptance rate and yield, this entering class.
The entering class, the acceptance rate this year is 18%. It was 19% last year. Again, we don't know the results, but I'm sure that that's going to put us comfortably in the top 10.
And then the yield?
The yield this year, I think, is 25%.
Right.
And again, I think we're going to, actually with that, I think we're going to be right around number 10. But again, I don't know the results yet of the other schools, but based on previous years, the yield last year, I think, was 24%. So we were up 1 percentage.
And then how many total apps did we have?
So total apps were 5,400, roughly 5,400. We had just over 5,300 in 2018, and that's the highest number of applications that we've ever had.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, just one comment. I really love this Alumni for Life, and as you know, it's a little trickier. Law School for Life. It's a little trickier with people in graduate and professional schools than it is, say, undergrad in terms of the affinity and the connectivity, but I think we have a lot of ingredients. One thing I would just point out is, particularly with the relationship with Kellogg, number of people I get called, frankly, a fair amount, just from LinkedIn and whatever, from Northwestern law grads about if they're considering making a transition from law to business, how that might work out. And particularly with our preponderance of JD and MBA students, I think there's a way to have alumni engage with Michelle to assist that particular process. And just throw that out, that we might take an inventory of some of our alums in varying age groups who might be willing to assist her in that process.
That's a great suggestion, Steve. Yeah, I agree with you completely. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Are there any other questions?
Yes, this is Tom White in Chicago, and I have two questions. With regard to if we have ideas about hiring or we're looking to hire or we have ideas about continuing education, are there particular individuals at the law school who we should reach out to?
Yeah, so you're certainly welcome to reach out to me on either of those. The assistant dean of our career center, who I guess more directly oversees the career center, is Dave Diamond. His email address is david-diamond@law.northwestern.edu. And then our Julianne Checky, C-E-C-C-H-I, it's j-checky@law.northwestern.edu. She is our assistant dean of external partnerships and is the person who directly leads all of our professional education programs.
You know, one of the things to keep in mind is that the state bars require continuing education for lawyers. And one of the areas that is particularly difficult to get good classes in is on the ethics and the diversity side. So that might be something that the law school could consider doing. And the other thing that I'd point out is that a lot of these courses that are offered by organizations are 1 hour at a time, but, you know, a bunch of them are fairly expensive. So I think there's a demand for a high-quality education at a reasonable or no cost.
Yeah, that's great. And I should say that as we view this, we're certainly not viewing it as something to increase revenue on. I mean, this is something where we want to provide a service, and you know, I think there's a really great opportunity to provide some high quality programming, as you say, at a very low or no cost to our alumni, and it's something that we should be doing.
I will be in touch with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. Any other questions?
Hey, Don, this is Carter Phillips in D.C.
All right, Carter.
The last few years has seen a pretty, stark financial war among the law schools in terms of what it takes to attract students in terms of scholarships, et cetera. And I know there was going to be at least some effort made this year to try to be more restrained in our response. Did that succeed, or have we continued the race to the bottom with the other law schools?
So I would say we succeeded with a caveat. Again, so that there's some perspective here, our discount rate got as high as 53% 3 years ago. The discount rate is the percentage of your tuition revenue that you are giving out in the form of scholarships to the entering students. Since then, it went down to 48% 3 years ago. It went down, 2 years ago, it was at 43% last year. This year, it was at 38%. So it's moving in the right direction. There's still, I'll say there's still considerable competition in terms of scholarships but I think things are starting to move in a more favorable direction financially in that regard. We did actually undertake this last year, a study. We consulted with Kellogg because they did something similarly, and then we actually involved some of our faculty members here in looking at data and whatnot. And so we did get some useful information from that. They didn't get as far as actually recommending a particular, metric. We want to build in some more years of data before we get to the point, I think, where they have enough confidence to do that. But it certainly provided some trends that we were able to use as we were doing the awarding that I think ultimately ended up helping us significantly. I mean, a 5% discount or decrease in the discount rate is pretty substantial.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carter. Don, one question that came in online effectively they want to know, how does our tuition rate compare to our peer institutions?
Okay. So at this point, we are actually now, think about right in the middle of the pack, if not just slightly below the middle of the pack. As you may know, we had actually gotten to the point where I think we were either the highest or second highest back in around 2010 or so. The other thing that I will say is if you look at the average debt of our graduates, we had gotten to the point where the average debt per student was over $160,000 back in 2014, the class of 2014. The class that graduated in 2018, their average debt had gotten down to $127,000. And I should say that the awarding of scholarship funds had a dual purpose during that period. Not only were we competing, but we were also trying to be targeted in trying to really reduce that aggregate debt, because that wasn't a place where we wanted to be number one in the nation. And actually that 2018 figure of 127,000 put us at 13th out of the 14 T14 law schools. Still waiting for the final figure on the class of 2019, but it should be very similar to where the class of 2018 was. So that's definitely something that we're happy to see moving in that direction as well.
Any other questions from those on the phone?
Don, this is Ken Gordon down in Texas. Question on what's the law school's view on the movement about LSAT and DRE and what's going on with our peer group on that as well?
Yeah, so I guess what I would say is that we're actually one of the movers to answer it. So again, I'll go way back in history here. So with our JD MBA program, we actually became the first school in the country that received approval by the ABA to accept the GMAT rather than the LSAT, and that goes back to the late 90s, early 2000s. So we had been accepting the GMAT for our JD MBA students for a number of years. I think it was 2 summers ago. We were the second top law school to announce that we would begin accepting the GRE as well. We underwent a validity study with the Educational Testing Service, and it showed basically the results of that showed that the GRE was just as valid of a predictor of success in law school for Northwestern as was the LSAT. And so the last 2 years we've accepted the GRE or the LSAT for our JD students. Harvard was the first to make the move in that direction. Other schools that are now doing the same are Cornell, Penn, Georgetown, University of Chicago. Trying to think if there are any others out there, but I think those are the ones. So I think about 6 or so, 5 or 6 of the top 14 law schools are now accepting it. Not seeing huge number of students coming in with that, but I'd say that we probably have a dozen or so who are in this class who took the GRE rather than AT.
Hi, Don. This is Prudence Beidler-Carr. I have a question following up on the sort of the Law School for Life approach to alumni support. I think it's a great idea, and I really I think it's a response to sort of a changing expectation that people transition in many different stages of their legal career. And so I think the law school's attention to that is terrific. I'm curious about whether, as part of that approach, there's any thought of sort of doing some of it regionally and having, the staff who are helping with that, hold gatherings in sort of set regions, building also on the theme that you mentioned. There's a lot of alumni who are working all throughout the country and the world at this point, and not just in the Chicago area, which I think is always an important point to underscore. But so I'm curious if there's sort of maybe as a complement to some of the alumni network building that Dan had done and that is ongoing under Kim's leadership, but that really would focus on sort of outreach outreach regionally to alumni at different stages in career?
Yeah, I don't want to say that we necessarily had that top of mind, but I think it's a really good suggestion. The one thing that we have done that I would actually include in this category, but I don't want to put forth that, we're doing it because of what you just suggested. But we do have the Entrepreneurship Alumni Speaker Series that Darnell and his team helped start up along with Kellogg and Medill, I think 2 years ago. And so I think it's twice a year. We've organized panels of experts and invited alumni from each of those schools to attend, and I think those have gone really, really well. And so, I would classify that as something that we would want to do under this initiative, and something we should be looking at doing at other places as well, in addition to other kinds of activities. So that I like your suggestion, and definitely something for us to think about.
Great, thank you. And of course, you're always welcome to say that something is a response to the suggestion. You're always welcome to claim it's a response to the suggestion, but no, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Prudence. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for being on the call. The good news is Don has given out many email addresses, including mine, and you can reach out to Don or reply to the invitation that we sent out to you if you have any questions that come up after this call. But we want to thank you all for being on the call. Thank you for your leadership and your philanthropy. We really appreciate that. And we hope to see you all on campus sometime in the near future. Have a wonderful rest of the summer, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.